Early in the morning, Seth wakes up to start another boring day in his life. He has no friends or family. His only company is the dogs from the animal control center where he works. After making sure that everyone is well fed, Seth enters the cage with Lexi and cuddles her just to get some affection. One evening, Seth takes the bus home and is surprised to see Holly. He approaches her to say hello, but she doesn't recognize him, so he explains they went to high school together. However, they never hung out. Seth was 1 year above her and knew her because she was popular. He notices she's writing in her notebook and calls her a writer, so Holly clarifies that she works as a waitress and writing is a hobby. Seth makes a bad joke and the mood gets rather awkward. Soon, Holly has to get off and Seth tries to ask her out, but she doesn't hear him. That night, Seth searches Holly on social media and is pleased to see she has a dog. The next day, Seth asks his coworker Nate for advice on how to pick up girls. Nate tells him to be confident and make them laugh. Afterward, Seth is devastated to learn that Lexi has to be put down. He takes her out of her cage and holds her down on the table while talking sweetly to her. When the doctor reminds him that he can adopt her to save her, Seth explains he lives in a no-pets building and he can't afford anything better. Lexi dies after she's given the injection, and Seth has to take her body to the crematory. Later, while Seth removes Lexi's profile from her cage, he hears a noise coming from the restricted area. He opens the door but doesn't find anything unusual. After work, Seth continues to stalk Holly on social media and begins taking notes on all the things he's learning about her. He goes to every picture to analyze the details and eventually finds the place where she works. The next day, he goes to the diner where Holly is working and has to introduce himself again because she doesn't remember him. He tries complimenting her hair, but she stays strictly professional and just brings him the food. Moments later, Seth tries asking her out, and Holly turns him down, saying she has a boyfriend. Seth immediately responds that she doesn't, which creeps her out. She leaves the bill on the table and walks away. That night on her way home, Holly has the feeling that someone is following her. It turns out Seth is outside her house, hiding in the bushes. Holly tells her roommate Claire that someone is outside their place, but Claire thinks she's just being paranoid. Then Holly gets a call from her ex-boyfriend Eric, who is extremely drunk. After Holly hangs up, Claire tells her she should forgive Eric for everything he did because being alone sucks. Holly refuses and drinks instead. The following morning, Holly arrives at the diner and finds a huge bouquet of flowers with a card that only says, "Be mine." After work, Holly visits Eric at his bar and asks him not to send her gifts, but he reveals that he wasn't the one behind the flowers. He tries to convince her to get back together, so Holly reminds him that he cheated on her. Soon, Seth also enters the bar and watches them from afar. When Holly goes outside to smoke and write in her notebook, Seth follows her and tries to chat with her. Holly still doesn't recognize him and announces she's leaving. Then Seth says he sent the flowers, and Holly finally remembers him, realizing he's been following her. A desperate Seth swears he isn't a psycho and just wants to talk, claiming he's never forgotten her after school. Holly tries to leave again, and Seth blocks her way, causing her to freak out. She manages to push him off and re-enter the bar, where Eric notices Seth following her. After Holly explains that Seth tried to grab her, Eric jumps over the counter and punches Seth in the face. Although he's bleeding on the floor, Seth can't stop laughing, so Eric kicks him, and Holly has to stop him from doing more damage. Eric throws Seth out of the bar, telling him to never come back. As he rolls on the floor, Seth notices that Holly dropped her notebook. Later at home, Seth takes care of his wound before he starts reading. It turns out the notebook is Holly's journal, where she rants about anything she's feeling at the moment. Seth stays up late reading every word and feeling connected to her inner fury. The next day at work, Seth enters the restricted area and finds a hatch on the floor. He goes down and finds an old abandoned room that is still connected to the main power lines, which gives him an idea. For the next few days, Seth works hard on his plan. He buys some things online and follows a tutorial to build a cage in the abandoned room. He also keeps studying Holly's journal and steals medicine from the shelter's infirmary. At home, he tests the sedative and instantly falls asleep without any side effects. A few nights later, Holly is going home when she notices someone following her. She stops and looks around, but Seth is already hidden. Then she keeps walking and senses something again, so she attacks with her pepper spray. Holly accidentally sprays a hobo instead and ends up running away while Seth is watching from his hiding spot. He decides to follow the man who is now screaming in the middle of the night. Moments later, Seth climbs a wall to enter Holly's apartment through the window. She's in the bathroom taking her medicine and hears the noise. She rushes to the living room but only sees the open window, so she closes it. Then she goes to bed, where Seth jumps on her and injects her with the sedative. Holly struggles for a second before passing out. Afterwards, Seth takes Holly to the shelter by hiding her in a box. When Nate questions this, Seth tells him his boss called him in the middle of the night to take care of a delivery. Nate believes him and only makes him sign in. Holly is starting to wake up and makes a noise inside the box, so Seth coughs to cover it up. She makes another noise, and this time Nate hears it. However, he blames it on the AC. Seth leaves after dropping her, and Holly fully awakens alone inside the cage in the abandoned room. She freaks out as she tries to open it, only to accidentally rip off a nail in the process. Grabbing onto the bars, she screams for help, but only the dogs can hear her. They bark at the noise, and Nate thinks they're just being themselves. In the morning, Seth brings her a bedpan and talks gently to her. Holly just insults him, so Seth says she's lost her right to food and we can try again tomorrow. He has to ignore her screaming on his way out. Once he's gone, she starts filing the bars with the lock chain. The following day, Seth finally gives Holly some water and food. She desperately grabs his leg and asks him not to leave, but he says it's important to establish boundaries to define their relationship and leaves after repeating that they'll try again tomorrow. That night, Holly starts hallucinating that Claire is there with her, describing all the bad things Seth will do to her. Holly snaps at her, telling her to shut up. Eventually, she has to use the bedpan and is startled when a rat approaches her in the middle of it. Holly freaks out and kicks it until the poor rat dies. The next day, Seth has to clean up all the blood. Holly asks him if he'll take advantage of her, and he says no, but when she asks if he'll kill her, he answers, "I hope not," which leaves her terrified. Seth explains he may not have a choice if he fails to save her. She thinks this is something from a cult of religion, but Seth claims he isn't doing it for him, he's doing it for her because she's special. He felt lonely and lost before he met her, and he thought she really saw him in return. However, he soon learned that it was the version of Holly she wanted the others to see, which is all a lie. He asks who the real Holly is because he wants to make sure there's a chance to save her. If there isn't, then she'll never leave the room. Holly just insults him, so Seth leaves. On his way out of the restricted area, Seth is caught by Nate, who reminds him he shouldn't be snooping around there. Nate sends Seth to clean before checking the door, but it's locked. That night, the Claire hallucination asks Holly what she'll do, and Holly says she'll wait. The following morning, Seth shows Holly that he has the journal. He tells her that he feels sorry for her, especially because she writes about love in a very depressing way. But Holly thinks a creepy stalker can't know what love is either. Then Seth asks about Claire, revealing he heard Holly talking to her and doing two voices when he arrived. He asks if Claire is in the room, and Holly answers no, but she can see her behind Seth. She claims she knows Claire isn't really there, but Seth isn't talking about just this room. It turns out Holly has been hallucinating Claire at home too. As Seth goes through the events in the journal, the truth is uncovered. Claire used to exist and lived with Holly around the time she got engaged to Eric. Eventually, Claire had an affair with Eric, which Holly learned by looking at his email. During a car ride, Holly confronted Claire, who apologized and said it didn't mean anything. A furious Holly started to speed up, driving like a maniac while ranting about what Claire did to her. She dodged a few cars, but in the end she lost control and her vehicle crashed. Both women woke up covered in blood, and Holly found a glass shard in her stomach. When she heard Claire talk, Holly removed the shard and stabbed her friend in the eye to kill her. The cops later believe that Claire died because of the accident. In the present, Holly says that she's a fiction writer, and Seth admits that's why he had to make sure before going to the police. He's been following Holly for days and has learned that since Claire's death, she's been killing random people in the streets in all kinds of gruesome ways. It was she who killed the homeless man by setting him on fire. Seth thinks she keeps the journal because she wants to get caught and punished for Claire's death, but he isn't here to punish her, he's here to save her. Holly agrees she wants to be saved before Seth leaves. The Claire hallucination appears to clap at Holly for her performance, and Holly admits she's lying to make Seth think he has a chance. The next time Seth visits Holly, he brings her some water and a cloth to wash, and he can't stop staring at her skin. They talk about her murders, and she explains she enjoys killing, but Seth doesn't believe her and thinks she's acting out of guilt and trauma. Holly then tells the story of sharks banging their heads against their glass cages in aquariums and proceeds to imitate them. She only stops when he asks her to, but she keeps taunting him, saying that if she self-deletes, the cops will think he did it. A disturbed Seth decides to leave. Later, Seth is sent to his boss's office and is scolded because he hasn't been doing his job. She won't fire him yet, but she's adding a disciplinary notice to his record. One more strike and he'll be gone. During his next visit, Seth only gives Holly 2 bars of chocolate, saying she must learn that she isn't in control. If she doesn't start to behave, he won't feed her at all. Holly tries manipulating him by saying she's dreamed about them living happily together at the beach, and Seth agrees to bring her more food. When Seth leaves the restricted area to get some snacks, Nate sees him again. Getting suspicious, Nate tries the door, and tonight it's actually open. He goes down the hatch and is shocked to find Holly in the cage. Holly asks for help, so he starts banging the lock to try to break it. At that moment, Seth comes back, and Holly makes a gesture, silently asking him to attack. Then she keeps Nate distracted while Seth sneaks behind him to hit him in the head. Nate immediately pushes Seth against the wall, so Seth takes out a knife to stab him a few times before running. When Nate tries to follow him, Holly stretches her leg to make him trip. Then she sweetly talks to Seth to convince him to kill Nate. Seth pounds Nate's head with a cinder block while Holly enjoys the show, and once he's done, he has a breakdown. Holly helps him keep calm and gives him instructions on how to get rid of the body. Using the doctor's tools, Seth removes all Nate's teeth, fingerprints, and nails. Then he chops up the body and feeds it to the dogs. The leftovers are all burned in the crematory. After taking a shower, Seth calls his boss to tell her that Nate went out to run an errand and never came back. Sometime later, he throws the teeth in the river. When he returns to the shelter, he starts cleaning all the blood while Holly keeps on rambling. She implies that he's attracted to her because of her dark side. After grabbing his hand to nuzzle it, she tries to force it to touch her intimately, but Seth takes it back. When he returns to the office area, he finds a detective going through Nate's things for clues. Seth is interrogated about the last time he saw Nate, but his story clearly has many holes. The detective also finds it suspicious that Seth is already talking about Nate in past tense. The next day, Seth has to move carefully around the shelter because the detective is still investigating. He brings food to Holly, but she won't move or speak. After days of begging, finally Seth convinces Holly to talk, and she asks for his finger as proof of his love. At first, he refuses, so Holly begins another manipulative speech about her feeling different and disconnected from society since she was young, and how only he understands her. Seth leaves the room and hides in the bathroom, where he freaks out for many minutes. After lots of thinking, he returns to Holly, who promises to behave if he grants her request. Seth sits beside the cage and proceeds to do exactly what she asked, which leaves him in lots of pain. Holly pretends to reach for the finger, but actually grabs the knife and threatens to self-delete if he doesn't free her. After Seth opens the cage, Holly comes out on trembling legs. She pushes Seth against the wall and says she loves him before kissing him, only to then slash his neck with the knife. The Claire hallucination points to the open door in the background. Sometime later, Holly is dating Eric again. She's also got a deal to publish her journal as a fiction novel. When Eric's phone rings, Holly looks at the message and discovers he's cheating again. Surprisingly, she stays calm and hands the phone to Eric without a word. Afterward, Holly goes to an abandoned warehouse where she's been keeping Seth in a cage. It turns out she mutilates him every time she gets a killing urge, so she doesn't attack other people anymore, which means he's technically saved her.